the toying in my mind, am I a content creator or am I an artist? So recently, it's I I enjoy the content creation. Like if I've really got into it, and I would have told you before that I hate marketing. I hate putting myself out there. I mean, there's parts of it I dislike, but I've grown to enjoy making the content. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. I've recently did the 100 days of the daily bars thing, and I found by the end of it, it was like a chore. And I was like, this shouldn't be a chore. I'm writing music. Like, doing it, it wasn't the fact of writing it. I think it was the fact of like, not the accountability, because the accountability was good, but the fact like it's just like, oh, I've just got to do this, and it's just like I'm just putting that out for the sake of putting it out, without being able to like take it anywhere else. It's just doing this, sharing out. Here's my daily bars again. Here's my daily bars again. Where you can like put out a proper release, you can explore so many different avenues. You can do the music video, you can do the lyric video, you can do the animated video, performance video. There's so many different aspects you can do. But that's just like churn, quick, and I find it can get like very confusing for the people looking at it as well. They don't really know what you're doing because you're just constantly just here's another thing, and
right.
and I mean that is how a lot of social media is consumed, but still at the same time, it's like no one really knows what you're actually pushing. So then you could put a release out. It's like, well, oh yeah, that's been and gone as well. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah, I see what you
really
mean.
trying to evaluate now. It's like, well, let's take it back and be like, because you can still do the content and just like make the music. But like you were saying about what your ideas are for the podcast, I mean, you can just take pieces of content from that, from when you're making the music, rather than like make a piece of content on purpose for what you're doing. Just do what you're doing and then make content from that. Do you know what I mean? So it's yeah. I'm then
Yeah.
being able to finish the tracks that I want to get finished, rather than being like, I can't do that because I've got to schedule a week's Instagram post or something. Do you know what I mean? It's well, it's like anything in life, isn't it? It's finding the balance.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, listen, so we just pressed record. I want to take it back to the beginning just to introduce you. But the truth is,
Yeah.
we don't really know each other. So maybe maybe the best bet is for you to introduce yourself.
So I am Gimson with the G. That's the one of the biggest things I get. It's like Gimson, but no, it's Gimson. So yeah, I am a hip hop artist. Yeah, dad of two. Train driver by day. And yeah, that's basically me. And we because we obviously kind of got acquainted through Recco, right? Or Jamie.
Yeah.
And yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so yeah, I don't know. You grew up near Bath. I don't know if it was in.
yeah. So growing up, so I was born in Bath. So grew up here until about the age of 7. So I went from sort of my upbringing sort of went from a single parent household in a teenage mother single parent household on a council estate in Whiteway to when she met my stepdad when I was like 7 or 8 to a middle class life in a village outside of Bath, Smithson Norton. But like I always kept my like kind of like social circles here. So yeah, that's kind of where I was. Yeah, my
Yeah,
sort of upbringing.
that's interesting. As far as so much of the stuff that I think is interesting with the journey of artistry is identity, and that
Yeah,
right there is quite a. I'm sure there was a lot going on, especially with
yeah.
hip hop. So, like, when did you come
So hip
across
hop for
hip hop
me. So
and
it's
rap and?
so I'd gone from being in the single parent household, and it's like thinking about it, it's like teenage mother single parent household. It's like so many stereotypes are like thrown at that. But my mum was completely not like that. She hardly ever went out. Like didn't do any drugs. Didn't smoke. And she kind of gave me like everything she could as a single parent in that household. But then we moved out there when I was sort of like 7, and so when we went into there, so my stepdad, so my mum's 17 years older than me, and my stepdad is 17 years older than my mum. So it's like, and so he already had 2 children. So he had my stepbrother and stepsister who were a lot older than me. And it was kind of an uncomfortable adjustment moving to there. Like, do you know what I mean? It was their mum had killed herself, so it was like kind of like the trauma already in that household. But moving there, it was kind of alien. And then it's like the attention that I had from my mum, where it was just being just me and my mum. And it's like, now she had like this new person. And it's like the attention's gone. Then you realize, why was I acting up? You don't know why you're acting up as a child. And then you're acting up for a reason because you're probably not getting the attention or whatever. But being there as well, there was a bully who lived down the road. And he was there one day. I must have been, what was I been? Probably about 10, I reckon. it must have been 10. Like, and he was listening to All Eyes on Me by Tupac, the album. And no, I'd never been heard hip hop before that. And I was like, oh, like he's shouting this shit at me, and I'm like, I'm just blanking out. I'm like, fucking, when on the films when the mouth's moving, it's like, fucking hell, what is this? This is hypnotic. Like, what the fuck is he listening to? And he was so like there to like boast. He had a double cassette, and he was like boasting what he was listening to. I was like, oh man, I gotta get me some of that. And it was kind of my refuge through teenage years, I think. And it's with the death of DMX recently, for the first time. It's the first time I've ever been like kind of like emotionally touched by the death of a celebrity. And I was talking to my mate Roscoe about it recently, and we were saying like it may have been the same with Tupac. I think with DMX and Tupac, very similar artists with their vulnerabilities, and they really showed they weren't like a lot of other hip hop artists. So like you think of that DMX sort of period, you've got Jay-Z, Nas, and all the big ones. There's a lot of like showmanship and a lot of like but where DMX was just raw. It's like, these are my vulnerabilities. Then you get into like the backstory of the man's life. It's just like, wow. I mean, it was always like there's so many things like you can take from it. It's like, wow, if this guy's been through that and he can do it, like why can I do it? Like, do you mean it's like in that, so it was like growing up with that, and it's like I think an artist who can really capture the lives of people all around the world like that, they're few and far between. They're truly magical. Do you know what I mean? And I think it may have been the same Tupac, but for me, getting into that was like the year he died, was it? I think it was around that sort of time, maybe been dead a year. So it's almost like looking back on an artist from the past, so to speak. Like he'd already died, like I hadn't had that connection. That had like grown, just like, yeah. And being like a fan of,
yeah. So did you go straight in from sort of listening and being a consumer to being a creator? Like were you rapping as a kid? Yeah.
I did it quite young. I was shit, but you got to start somewhere, right? So yeah, I would have been, what have I been? So my mate Wayner at school, his dad was like proper into his tech, and his dad had like CDRs when CDRs first come out. It's like, holy shit, you can burn your own CDs, like, do you know what I mean? And it was 1990, like we were like year 7 or 8, 1990 some up. And 2001 had come out by Dre. So I think it was like 98, 99, I think it was. Because I was always like, why is he called it 2001? It's like not even 2000 yet, you know what I mean? But I was always confused by the title of the album. So yeah, he had that. And I remember he also had on his computer, he had Hip Hop EJ. And it was like, oh, cool. You could just like drag and drop like the little sample blocks to make beats. And like, yeah, then I'd start writing to that. And it was like, just like basically imitating, but to rap or gangster hip hop from the time. So just like just imitating, trying to find your place. And then like, of like about maybe age of 15, 16, introduced to like Black Twang, Rodney P. It's like, oh shit, these guys have got English accents. Like, what's this? And then obviously you had the whole garage thing, the Heartless Crew, So Solid for doing their thing. And then it's like, oh, okay, so like maybe I don't have to try and be this like American thing that I'm not. Like you're going back to, it's like trying to find your identity with anything. It's like, so yeah, that was like a real breath of fresh air. Like to hear Rodney P do his like London patois type sort of like thing, and then so then I kind of went down and like for like a lot of the early stuff, like then there was YMP, which was Younger Minds Productions. So you had like Lodo, Smiley, like a few of the like local people, Roscoe, and that was like kind of like the first collective I was in. And even then, like I rapped with a lot higher pitched voice, and I still sort of like had the like London twang type thing going on. And it wasn't until like I'd say sort of like only in like the last 5 years really. So like I'm 35 now. It's only sort of like the last 5 years. I really envy when I see these like young, really talented guys who are like so fucking deep in me. It's like, oh man, how did you get like that so early? Like, do you know what I mean? Like fucking, but yeah, it's a journey, and you got to love the journey, man. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah, I wanted to. There's a lot there. Like, I mean, that's an interesting thing. The accent. And I think in all artistry as well, there's an element of permission. Like, can I do it this way? Can I not? Yeah. You know, and you kind of need to, I think everything now is so different, you know, from accents just to how prolific American hip hop was when I was growing up. And then, yeah, as you say, as soon as you see Rodney P, there's suddenly like, oh, there's permission to do it in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything else was there ever a time where you were like, should I even be rapping? Like, did those questions cross your mind, or was it always just love of expression, or was there an element of like?
Do you know what though? I never really like. It's only sort of like in the last 5 years I've really like loved to really put myself out there, because I've always like been quite conservative with what I'm putting out. It's like, oh, I don't know, like what people are going to think, what they're going to say. Always those sort of like vulnerabilities of like, oh, should I? And the imposter syndrome. I've had dealt with imposter syndrome a lot in my life, anxiety, all those kind of things. Do you know what I mean? And it's working on them themselves is its own thing. And it's me and Roscoe have just started a podcast as well. And we got a guy Sai from Mind That Music coming on Sunday to chat with us. And it's just a organization and charity about mental health and making music and how good it is for mental health. It's really interesting because I want to talk to him about the darker side of it, of putting yourself out there. Because whilst making the music and being creative is very therapeutic, and it really is good. Do you mean it's a beautiful thing? The bearing your soul and the putting it out there can have the opposite effect. It can really be like, it can really tear people down, especially how like now it's everything's recorded now. When you put something out, it's like there, it's stamped on the internet. It's not like you can burn a CD and it's like, well, only 5 people have got those CDs. Like, I mean, that'll never get heard, thank God. So now it's like you put it out and it's like I mean, especially for an artist who's got like a bigger following, for example, it's like, whoa, you put something out and you're like, oh, I'm not really happy with it. But again, it's that being getting comfortable in your own skin, and it's a battle in itself. And I kind of did when Carvel was born. So Carvel's 5 years old, he's 6 next month. It's my son, and so when he was born, it was kind of like a transition, like of responsibility, so to speak, of something for the first time being more important than myself. So then it was like, okay, let's stop smoking. Start to follow like a whole food plant-based diet. Started to meditate. I actually went through that time as well afterwards. I'm sorry, I missed a bit out. So it's like I took everything offline. I was like, oh no, I did this, and I kind of like just didn't want anything like public. I was like, become like really private and recluse, because it was I was going through some sort of like awakening or transitionary period, like with a lot going on. And those sort of like 4 years. So it was only the beginning of last year I really started putting stuff back out again, because I felt like I was mentally strong enough to do it. But those 4 years, it was like a big transition. So,
and were you creating during that whole time as well?
I was writing, but like I've always written, and it's always like I'm a morning person. I'm most productive early hours of the morning. So it's like get up, it's like journal, want to write a song. That's the best time to do it. I mean, I can do it later on in the day, but it's not going to be the best performance. It's like after lunch for me. It's kind of like, yeah, wind down, chill out. I mean, my missus knows as well. She wants anything productive done from this. Like, get him in the morning, post 12 o'clock. It's like, yeah, chill out time. So yeah, I was writing a lot and I was doing stuff. But it was just like, yeah, that was then. It was purely for me. I was just writing it, and then it's like it got to the point where I was doing this other thing, and I was learning a lot more about everything really. I just gained a new interest in like things that weren't superficial and shallow, and so more deeper, like any topic that was like had a deeper value or meaning than just like
so a kind of period of redefinition in some way, kind of like coming back to the center, figuring out who you wanted to be before
it's like, who am I, not like who do I want people to think I am. It's like really truly who I am. So it was, and then once I was writing this, I was like, the writing got so much better because I wasn't writing for people, and it was really exploring like you and because the writing improved so much, and it was like, wow, like this stuff's like really good. This is the best stuff I've been writing since ever. Like this is too, and then I just was like, well, this is too good to just like keep here. It needs to.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think I'm just listening to a book by it's called The Art of Learning, and it's by a chess champion from the States. And there was this film made on him called In Search of Bobby Fischer, and he was a young guy. I think he was like 17 or something when this film came out, and so he went from his whole life being dominated by chess and the love of the game to suddenly being in the spotlight, and you know, like everything that comes with that, like paparazzi, girls, fame, and just on his games, people were watching it with a different, you know, through a different lens. And he became aware of suddenly he was playing chess for someone, you know, and it really started to mess with him. And it gave me this insight into I think this was like before the 2000s or something, you know what I mean? And that's almost like every creator's life right now can feel like that, even
Yeah,
though the whole world isn't watching you. Because of the creative platforms that we have, I think it's quite hard to actually find that identity as an artist, because you
yeah,
don't get a chance to sort of do your practice in private. Before every day can feel like game day because it's
yeah,
always public.
yeah. There was an interview with Kano recently, and he kind of said similar things. He was saying back for that sort of like grime birth, like in the early 2000s, the early days of it, where again it'd be like a lot of ciphers, and he goes, you'd mess up a lot on the microphone, and he goes like, even though there'd be followings, it'd be live, it'd be there, it'd be done, it'd be gone. He says now you don't have that room for error of finding yourself, like artists from the past. He goes, you're finding yourself in front of the camera now. And I look at it with kids as well, and I'm thinking, well, everything's recorded, everything's documented. So all that stupid shit that you were doing, like when you were like younger, and it's like someone's always got a phone and it's got a camera, and it can be quite nerving and quite anxious, even if you're not doing something like for as a creator or something. It can just still be quite nervy and anxious. I mean, my missus hates it. She just doesn't like to be on the camera at all. So it's like I know there's times like she's walked in the back of the shot. I said, "You're in it." And she's, "Oh, you're in it." It's like, and then I like get permission to put it up. Like, do you know what I mean? But it's, yeah, she doesn't like it at all. She just And now I think it's quite scary the way that the world's going. It's like everything's recorded, and for people that are private, and it's really interesting about a lot of artists. I find it's like they can be introverted, but they have to be extroverted for the necessary good of putting it out. And it's but I find that the writing process is you need a lot of introversion to write the best stuff, and it's like letting that time sit. And I think the consumption habits now, also don't like to sit and moan about consumption habits, because it's just, you're moaning about something what is, and this we're not going to change that. Once Pandora's box has been opened, you move with it and get with it, or you don't. But yeah, it's a lot different. I mean, like albums, whilst you can put an album out, you really need people beforehand, and to do that you just need lots and lots and lots and lots of songs and lots of content. It's like, because I've really there's a guy, Damien Keys, so he's a music marketing like guy. He's really great. He's like a breath of fresh air. He's not someone who's always trying to sell courses with a 7 at the end. Do you know, it's like, come on my course and pay more. It's like, nah, it's like, this is it. I'm constantly churning out courses. So I joined there, and like that was where I kind of like learned the way of putting the creative side into that. And they actually brought me on as a moderator on the group and that there in there. So it was like, oh yeah, it's like really like took to that. So it's been great to learn that aspect of it as well, because that can be just as creative in this. Like someone asked me the other day, they said, what is your personal meaning of life? And I said, to create. I said, whatever it is you're creating at the time, whether it's babies, I don't know, to DIY in your house, music is to create, to offer and make something that wasn't there before. Whether
on that point, like I was kind of aware that there was a period of time where you stepped away from music, and I wasn't sure how, I've just found out that's more about the public stepping away rather than you kept creating in your own time. And what you've just said there about, you're always in an act of creation and kind of viewing life through that lens of like, I'm a creator, whatever I'm doing. In a relationship, you're creating good times, bad times, depending how you look at it. It gives you like this breadth and empowers you. I think sort of honoring your creative spirit is quite an empowering way to approach life. This thing that you talk about, joining this course and then becoming a moderator, kind of touches on this community element of creativity as well. Like how has being in collaboration with others, and whether that's through little hip hop crews or sort of compared to just this lone creator in your bedroom, wherever it is, to actually being part of something a bit bigger, and how those two interact with each other to either further your creativity or in some cases maybe like limit you or find yourself comparing yourself against others. And
well, to in the collaborations, I mean, I enjoy that side, but at the heart of it, it's like I still now, like when I'm recording in the studio with people, I very much like recording on my own. I don't like going into a booth with like behind the booth. I like to be in the room and in the present. But yeah, I really like the recording side of it on my own, and the making of my own. And this, I do go and like catch vibes with people, but at the heart of it, that's where it's at for me. Even when I'm collaborating, it's like I'll do it, and it's like I like to go back for my own assurance and maybe tweak things and do things on my own, because it's just in my own little like safe space, so to speak. And then what was the other bit we were saying about collaborating? That's it's a collaborating. I was going to go off on a tangent about something online. So yeah, so when you say about comparing yourself, that's another thing. It's like I've really tried hard to work on just comparing myself to myself, which is a really hard thing to do, especially because you really have to be active on social media. You really have to like be seeing what other people are doing. You have to do, and it's like and this, it can also have that double-edged sword of like where you can then start doing things like what other people are doing, and it can kind of draw you away from your own sort of things. Like, because for those 4 years where I wasn't really playing for now, I wasn't really aware of anything that was going on like in the world, period. Like I wasn't watching the news, like I wasn't, do you mean, it's just like anything that would like the social issues or whatever the current affairs were, or the current affair trends on Instagram, whatever the new thing was what everyone's talking about. Just wasn't aware, and it was so beautiful, like to just not to be like blissfully unaware and just like really just being tuned into your own intuition and your own gut feeling. Because I find like you read comments and you see what other people's opinions are on things through social media, and it's like it's not always the people that you want to see the opinion of. And it's like if you're buying a book or you're tuning into a certain podcast or whatever, you're actively seeking out because you think that's a great mind I want to listen to, or that's something too good. So when it's just the everyday public, it's I can't remember who it was. It was one of the was it no, I wouldn't play it. It was Socrates. It was the other day someone was talking about Socrates, and it was they were saying why he was against democracy, and he was saying like true democracy, and he was saying the reason he was against true democracy. And I thought it's a really interesting take. I don't know whether I believe in that or not, but it was a really interesting spin on it. He was saying the reason true democracy is because you're giving too much power to people that don't really know what they're on about. And he was saying like people don't have all the information or anything in front of them, so you're giving people that aren't educated in certain areas like votes on things that they have no idea about. And it was a really interesting thing. I was like, well, yeah, I can kind of see the argument on that. It was it was interesting.
Yeah, I think there's also something about that as well as negativity can somehow carry more weight to it. So you can have 50 positive comments and then one negative one, and that's the one that you think about.
Oh yeah, and you know what you do? It's like I just see like now it's like I've been aware of it because like Damo talks about this in the group, and then he says that when every now and then people talk about the negative comments they've got on something, and it's like it can like really get people in a mindset of where they're like they'll just skim past the 50 good comments you said. And it's like, but that one comment's got them. It's like they're chasing that, and then they just find themselves just looking for bad comments. It's like, whoa, step back. You've just had like 50 amazing comments. It's like when people say they've had a bad day. It's like letting the bad day define them. It's like when the whole thing of like you haven't had a bad day. You had like a couple of minutes in that day where something bad happened, and it's just like throwing you off. But your actual day in general has not been bad. You just had one asshole in a car like flip the bird at you and just shout some abuse out the window, and your whole day's defined by it. But it's not really a bad day. It's just that moment.
So in your own sort of journey with your music, how have you what's the relationship you've had with your own creative process and some of those doubts that come up? It sounds like you're speaking to an element of like, look, we need to look at the whole picture. And I think when we're in a funk with where we're at creatively, it can feel so narrow. It can be like, God, I'm just stuck in this same thing. And yet when you look at your whole body of work, and maybe that even sounds like too big for some people, but just your whole creative expression, there's so much more that it can give you, So I think even if you're not to buy the whole picture, I think that there's so much that, you talked about finding your voice, in those 4 years, you were not looking at all these other things, but you were kind of using your creativity to really find out who you were. And regardless of what your music is, like how much is that worth in the bigger picture? Like, that's priceless, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that
I think as well with like the inspiration sort of thing, it's like the inspiring things are never the music. It's like always things outside. So like being in a good space mentally. So the journaling, like jujitsu, I took up that. Like what was that? So that was like halfway through sort of like my. I've been doing that for 2 years now, and again something like that, like the thought of, well, not a thought, because you can't think, you're there, so you've got to do. You got some bloke trying to choke you or snap your arm off. In that moment, you've got no choice but to like focus on that task in hand. And it's just those things of just finding ways to clear your mind. Because our minds, to me, especially as creatives, it's like you constantly like, yeah, it's. I mean, I get this like, right, quick, write that down. Let's not forget that one. Do you mean, it's, no, I've done it before, like waking up in the middle of the night. It's like, oh, quick, yeah, don't forget that. Like, jot it down. Do you mean this? So like, yeah, to be able to do something or different things that can truly take your mind off it. And it's, yeah, and I'm being in the quiet, and I think my job really helps because in a world today, it's like very hard to just truly switch off and sit there in silence with nothing. And in my job as a train driver, you have to sit silent. You can't have your phone on. It's like, I mean, it's against policy. You get caught with your phone on, it's just like a sackable offense. Like you can't have any distractions in there. So you are,
perfect.
You're sat in there and it's just you, and like there's no noise. It's apart from like maybe the noise of like going on outside, but yeah. And it can be really hard to do that off your own accord. So it's like I'm signing myself up for, like they say like the way that slavery's changed. It's just people now voluntarily just sign themselves up for a portion of their day rather than being like completely enslaved. It's like, yep, you can have my 8 hours for the day for a wage, and it's like a kind of like a mutual thing. So it's like that. So it's almost like, but this like look at the benefits, because as well, like being in a working environment with the toxicity that can come with that, being in mess rooms and people moaning about things, and it's just like and that it can be so easy to get involved in that regards as well. As you sit there, someone else is moaning, it's contagious. Yeah, you get involved, and it's like, oh my god, you walk away from it thinking, oh god, that was really toxic.
Yeah,
it's
like definitely not all ships rising together as sort of everyone.
No, but then again, like a lot of my music, it's like I was with Noodles the other day, and he was like, yeah, it's morbid. I mean, he really likes it, and a lot of people do, and it's like I was always assuming it's like, oh, because generally I'm an outgoing person. I went for a period where I was quite low, and it's like now when I see people with like negative comments, I think this really helped getting in tune myself and realizing why I was negative or why I felt hatred towards things, or I felt jealous towards things, or I felt envious of things. And it's like all these the feelings you don't want in life. So when you've been there and you feel that, and then when you can realize, if you can get out of that and you can realize, hang on a minute, that was me. I didn't hate that person. I wasn't envious of that. That was all me. That was my mind not being happy in the space that I was. Do you mean I was not happy in my skin? So then there's like, when you unravel that, and it makes those comments, like we were talking about with the negative comments from people, it makes that a lot easier to be like, well, okay, it's maybe not truly me. Like they're pissed off.
Yeah,
they're not happy in themselves.
I think that's a key part of kind of maturity and having that self-reflection. And if I look at times that, you know, I've been a lot more controversial and just like poking the bear. And I think a big part of that is because I wasn't creating as well. This balance of like, I've got all of this energy and and I'm not knowing how to channel it creatively. And so I'm going to take on something that I can't change, like the whole global fucking system, you know, and just start ranting or poking and pissing people off. Yeah, you know, it's poorly used creative energy. It's a kind of a low bar,
I mean, especially now. I mean, the world is like the other day, they said the world is. Oh, what's the guy who wrote *Sapiens*? Yuval Noah Harari. Yeah. So it was him. I think it was a conversation with Mark Zuckerberg he was having, and he said humans are more connected than ever, but we're not harmonized, and that's the key. And it's working out how to harmonize, because the world now is like the divisiveness, and it's really toxic to get into it. And it's like, what narrative are you prescribing to? Do you know what I mean? It's and divisiveness works in the favor of the people that they want it to work, and you can just see so much of it going on, and it's like you can really buy into it, and you can get involved, and you can feel those toxic things. So I remember 2016 sort of time. It was like the rise of Corbyn, and it's like, oh, I kind of like this guy. And then I started getting into like Twitter feeds, and it was like, oh man, this is like some toxic think tank stuff. I mean, it's like you're just like in echo chambers, and it's like really like the different ideas he was bringing to, because I was never a fan of politics. It was like, oh, like it's just these guys are the same, you're not getting anything different. It's like, oh, this guy's different. Like, I mean, and he came across as genuine. I was like, oh, this is. Then I went into it. It's just like the way that people were talking to each other on Twitter and the comments, and like how like it's like, oh, like, do you mean it's like they can't have there's the element of the grown-up conversation. It's like you go out into the real world and you have a conversation with someone who thinks a little bit different from you. It's like, oh, okay, well, why do you think like that? And you'll have a great conversation, but it's like the emotions removed. It's like this filter in between it, and it's just like it can get so really misconstrued. And I think if like you're only limited to how many characters you've got to write, and it's like, how do you get your point across in those limited characters about like, and then you, with the expression, the facial expression, you haven't got the tone of voice, and it can just be read into like, you can just be read in so many wrong ways, and it's just like, oh, yeah, I don't know if I like this. Instagram's a lot more nice. Let's go look at some pictures of some nice stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, definitely choose your social media wisely, I think, for like your emotional contentment. Definitely. I want to come back to this thing of habit and context in a way. Like, I love what you talk about of working in a train. You're sort of forced in this position where you have to spend time with yourself and the track or whatever, which is nice metaphor for you as well. So what when you, like, before you had your kids, you mentioned at the start, like you're most creative in the morning, or you're going to write your best songs in the morning. Is that something that you established more clearly for yourself when you started to have confines and limits and like other duties to do in the day and responsibilities? That
definitely. I think that in the most recent years, it's like, if I don't get up before everyone, it's the day's not as fun. If I can get up and I can come down and I can do some like meditation, yoga before everyone, which is straight to, but you can't always, because I'm working shifts. So it's like, if I'm working late or whatever, getting up is just gonna screw me up the next day because I've not had enough sleep or whatever. So but it shows, and it's just that calm and quite nice. Like, oh, this is really nice. Like, this is like the most productive time. I'm clear-headed, and I think it's as the day goes on, and it's like, for example, it's like I have all these great ideas, and then you step out into the real world, and it's like, oh, I don't know if these ideas are any good anymore, because again, it's like the thing, like you're being bombarded with whatever you're being bombarded with, whether it's real life talking to people, whether it's online.
Yeah,
it's like,
what allows you to kind of keep that romance alive between you and an idea? Which ones do you nourish? Which ones do you let go? How does that look like for you?
I write it all down. I mean, and it's changed, and it is ever changing. I was always quite blasé is the right word, but the way I'd write before, it'd just be like, when it comes, it comes. Like, to me, and I'd write a lot anyway, so it wasn't like I wasn't just like I wouldn't like write one song in 6 months or whatever. Like, it would just come and I'd just write stuff. But then when I did this like 100 days of daily bars thing, it was like, just held myself accountable. All right, 30 minutes a day. Let's see if it can like sharpen the tool set. And I'm not sure if it did or not. I'm not sure if it did. I know they say like world-renowned songwriters, that's what they do. They make them stuff and they force themselves to be creative. And I can see that argument with it, but I'm not sure if I wrote anything better doing that. I mean, I did it for 100 days, and I still write, like, well, most days anyway. I just don't do that rigidness of right. 30 minutes, timer's going on, here we go. So it's now it's just like, okay, I'll write this.
You mentioned earlier that it started to feel like a bit of a chore, and in part that was the having to upload it, and there's the social media aspect.
Yeah, and it was like, because the first 50 days, I just actually documented my and just me talking what I was doing. It's like, yeah, and I don't think from a viewer's perspective that was very interesting. So then I was like, well, I'll just do it over the track. And then I batched them. So I was doing them. I was always working ahead of myself. So then I was like, well, I need to get this down. I can't be doing this every day. Because initially I was doing it every day. So that was like the time to go onto YouTube, upload. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. There's a lot of other stuff I've got to be doing in life. So I mean, it's like, And then I was like, right, I've got to batch it. And now it's like just trying to find how to be as productive with the time I've got. So for example, doing like a video shoot, don't just shoot one video. You've got the camera out, like shoot a few, like do a few things whilst you've got it there, rather than being like, I've got to do that and I've got to do that and I've got to do that. Just like, no, do all of that and then do all of that, and you kind of like maximize your time rather than it's just. But it's been a learning curve. It's been a big learning curve. Like the putting it outside of things has been a big learning curve, more than anything, more than the creative side of things, I think.
In what way?
Because I didn't, when I came back like a year ago to like social media, I didn't even know how to do an Instagram story. I just, I was fresh. I was like, well, this has all changed. So 4 years not being like things on Facebook. I mean, I don't really use Facebook much at all. Like I cross share the odd post. I think it's too much. I have too many platforms. So it's just kind of just like, well, I'll just use Instagram. I'll just use that, pick that as my main one. But like the features and stuff on Facebook, like even they'd all changed. It's like, what's this? Like, what's that? And there's like all these extra different things, and you had like the different like buttons and like hearts and care things. And,
was there a time in that learning curve where you thought you had to learn everything before you started? Because there's something you're saying about there's creativity and then there's productivity and there's kind of a workflow, and like what you just said about don't just shoot one video. You've got the camera there, you've got the equipment, but that's a learning curve of like figuring out a workflow that makes the most sense with what you've got. I know that there are some creators out there. This is me. I'm talking to myself. I can tend to be like, I get interested in the workflow. Like, oh, how can I make this efficient? What's the best? What's the best way to approach this? And yet you can only refine once you've actually got a fucking process in place. You know what I mean? And that process can kind of happen organically, and you got to get something out. You've got to make something exist before you can refine it. And I think that's one thing that, because you've got people selling you courses, or this is how you're going to do it. Don't waste all the time that I did. I'm going to save you all this time. And I think there's actually a crucial element in any creative's journey of like, you have to waste that time. You have to like, just go around the houses and do the things and then refine it.
Of course you do. Of course you do. And it has been like that. I mean, whilst having like a community of other people that are doing it, but that's what I really like about DKMBA. So in there, it's more of a community than you're going on a course. It's not a course. It's like, no, this is a community. And there's artists. And I've met so many interesting and great artists through it, from genres I would never have met, like all over the world. Collaborated with a few of them. And it's great because they're all doing the same thing. They're all independent artists. And it's like a real safe haven in there. There's no ego in this community, and it's great. And it's like, it's a private Facebook group for the members, but like everyone in there is just like so supportive, and because they're all going through it and they're all doing different things, and it's like there's no like secrets to it. It's like, I did this worked well, or this, and I think that's really helped more than like going on a course, because you could like you say, you can go on so many courses, and it's like you can read so many books, but until you actually do it, it's like, it's the ring. It's like people like they can be very textbook literate, but like there's that element of real life. Like having kids is really strong. It's like you can tell your kids till you're blue in the face something. It's like if they've got that urge or that gut instinct to do it, they're going to do it. So you're better off, rather than working yourself up. It's just like, as long as they're not going to kill themselves, it's just kind of, well, go on then. Like,
give them some experience to work with.
Just do it. Like, do you mean? Like, it's I think it's like everything is like going back now, and it's when your parents tell you things, and it's like, nah, you need to work it out. You can't like tell people like they do, whether it's creative or just life in general. You do need that experience, and you just got to dive in. And it's like, that's one of the things I learned, because like putting myself on video, that was like another big learning curve of like last year. Of like, I did my first talk to the camera video last April, and it was making of Another Day in Paradise, the radio edit. And I was like, right, okay, let's work out how I can do these YouTube videos of me just talking to a camera. And I felt like a right prick. I felt like a right bellend. You know what I mean? Just sat there on my own, like talking to this camera. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Summoning up enthusiasm for.
Oh mate, I was like, and I put it off for ages. I kept putting it off, and I'd ask other people like, well, so what's the best one? What did you do? Did you get certain equipment? Did you get this? And like, everyone I spoke to said the same thing. You just got to do it. You've just got to do it, and then you just kind of like going on. It's like, oh, and then like knowing deep down, like all along, like your gut's telling you, you just got to do it.
Yeah.
But you're just like, your head's like, no. Your ego's telling you, no, you don't do that, don't do that. It's like trying to talk you out of it. It's like just do it, and then you do, and like doing, and each one of these little things doing, like making the videos, like okay, and that, I think that's helped me grow in comfort as well. Like even because I do my good morning message on Instagram. I mean, some days I get up and I think, oh, is this gimmicky? Do I feel like a right prick doing this? But from that, like, there's people who like say they have a bad day, and I do. I like this. I try to remember most days. It's like, unless I'm really busy, I'll go in, and if they put like they voted bad, but no, I'll go in and like have a chat and say like, "What's up?" Like, do you know what I mean? And it's and that besides the music, I mean, okay, it's all like initial engagement, but besides that, like I've had like real meaningful conversations with people about like bad days and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's like that as well. It's like there's the that side of it as well.
Was that something you were aware of missing before? You know, because I think there's something about artistry. You put yourself out there, and I want to touch on this as well because your music can be especially gritty and stuff. But you're putting yourself out there, and it gives people something to relate to. You know, you can make quite deep connections, and just the vulnerability of showing up and being like, hey, look, this is what it is. I may not be perfect, but I'm sharing my voice. And that gives people something. I think just that is like so many people were searching for connection or sense of like meaning just by existing. And I think artists give people permission to be like, look, whatever it is you do, whether it's a weird banana on the wall or like, you know, the fact that you're saying like, I did this, it gives other people being, it's like, yeah, oh shit, I've got a voice too. So like those connections, were you in search of connection by putting yourself out there, or did you feel like
maybe
you were kind of squared away with your family and stuff, and it was a secondary?
I think maybe if I think I'd grown comfortable with that, and it's like you've got to practice somewhere, right? And if you practice with yourself, of getting to know yourself, and then you practice getting to know your family, and then you can kind of ripple outwards. And it's like if you can be you there, and then you can be you and truly you in front of them, can you truly be you in front of the rest of the world? And then it's like the whole thing is like I know they do like, because I do like a lot of guided meditation stuff. It's like the whole thing of like love and kindness, and it's like starting small. So you think of like bring someone to mind that that you don't have a complicated relationship for, and you truly do wish love and non-suffering and happiness for, and then do it, ripple it out, do it to someone neutral. You know, someone who works in the coffee shop who you buy a coffee from, who you've got no connection with, but you just see them there each day doing their job, making the coffee, and then like try and channel out to then someone you don't like, and it's just like, do you mean it's like trying to just ripple out. So it's like anything. So being that comfortable. So yeah, I guess the connection. Maybe I felt I have more to give than just what I did at home. Subconsciously, maybe. I don't think that was like at the forefront of my mind. But yeah, it probably was. There probably was an element of that, I'd imagine. It's like growing as a human. So I've got this much to give here. Kind of maybe I've got this much to give here. And it's those small incremental steps. Like we was talking about them with like jumping into the deep end. It's like you just got to do it. It's like goals and steps. It's like don't ever try and make a take the plunge, but then you'll work out each step as it goes. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're never going to get from here to here. It's like it's the small steps, and those incremental steps will just get you so far. And when you truly look back, and you think, oh no, this hasn't done so well, and it's like taking a like pause, look back. It's like, wow, I've had a fucking really productive year. Like last year, like I was beating myself up, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, why am I beating myself up? I've done so much. I've put so much out, and it's like, I think
is that easy for yourself to hear? Like, what's that conversation like? Is that, you know, because you're doing a lot of mindfulness practices by the sounds of things, and still that voice is going to enter. So what's it like for you to actually accept that? Like, fuck, I've done a good year. Or does that just happen when you give yourself the chance to look at it?
Yeah, I have to give myself the chance to look at it. I mean, it's now it's with all this practice I've done, it's helped a lot in the way of I'll catch things early. I won't let it fester. It's like, oh, I'm feeling that, and you do. And it took fucking ages to realize it. It's like anyone who's like starting, it's like, look, meditation is not something you just fucking do for like, it's like, and it was really weird because very I sit there some days, and I had to do the guided ones because like otherwise I'd just like, what the fuck is this? Like, do you know what I mean? And catching yourself, and I don't always catch myself, but I catch myself a lot sooner now. It's like, okay, I'm feeling like this. This is a feeling. This my feelings don't define me. Like my body doesn't define me. My feelings don't define me. Like my body is constant, fluid, changing thing. Like to me, like the food I put in is what defines my body, and these cells will grow and depending on what I eat or what I nourish myself with. And my mind is the same. I can change my mind, and it's not getting into that rigid state. And it's like teaching yourself to become more aware of it, and catching it early before you like get all anxious and like the anxiety consumes you and you don't really want to talk.
And so when you catch it early, what's the next step that you're taking?
Witnessing it and being like, oh, okay. And then like it's because you've witnessed that, you've witnessed the thoughts, and then you can like once you've witnessed the thoughts, it's like you can put the logic into it, and so but you can then be like, well, okay, no, you mean you can then challenge yourself, and you can because you've witnessed it and you've caught yourself and you've stopped that, and it's like, well, and you challenged yourself. I suppose it's like speaking up to a tyrant who's outside of yourself, someone who's trying to enforce. Well, it's like having the balls to stand up and go, no, hang on a minute, that's not right. Do you know what I mean? It's and I think the first step is like being able to do that with yourself before you can then like do that in the real world. It's like, no, you're wrong. It's like being able to like do that to yourself, and it took a lot of work to get there, but and there's still a long way to go. Still a long way to life's forever a learning curve. Do you know what I mean?
I love actually that whole piece actually, and especially this what you described of starting somewhere which is comfortable with this meditation of love and kindness. There's someone that you can actually appreciate and that feels comfortable, and then going from there outwards. So one of the things I do in this work as a creativity coach is like really fostering those small steps that feel easy enough, because it's so easy to get, okay, so that step. And although the first one might be easy, if you focus on the 20th, all of a sudden you're overwhelmed. But if you can start with where you're at and start with what feels easy. And I think that there's something about cultural narratives of hustle and especially, I think as a man, there's also this thing of like, I've got to push myself through it. I've got to, it needs to feel like a struggle. And it's easy to get into this cycle of not creating because you're just engaged in the struggle rather than like, what's going to make it easy? What's going to make it easy?
There definitely is something about those incremental steps, and it's like you can tick it off. And it's as well, it's like not getting caught up with numbers is the other thing. It's like because I did that earlier on, sort of like last year, and it's like numbers, and you're like, oh, how many streams? Or it's like, no, don't measure by numbers. While numbers can be very good at measuring things tangibly, what was the feedback? How many nice DMs did you get? What was the level of feedback? Did you get fire emojis, or did you get like, oh wow, like that really touched me? You spoke to me on a subconscious level with that. Like, do you mean?
Yeah.
Measure it with that. That will, like, do you mean? It's like if you receive those, even if it's like 1 or 2 comments, you're receiving those comments, like fuck your numbers. Do you know what I mean? You could be a million views with 0 comments. It's like, yeah, cool, 1 million people have seen it, but no one like liked it enough to comment or like really engage it. So when someone sent you a DM saying like, oh wow, like, I mean, that resonated with me on a deeper level, measuring it with those. So that was like, so now it's like, I think to probably be more successful in a business sense, they probably should look at the numbers more, but like, nah, man, do that meaning. You don't want to detract from that, because then that takes away from what the whole purpose of what you're doing it for in the first place. So there was like Oh Daddy, which I brought out in 2014, and I brought out I Love You Baby in the same year. And they're a couple of my favorite songs that I've done. And Oh Daddy was the domestic abuse, like the Fleetwood Mac sort of like interpolation in this, about domestic violence, the alcoholic dad. And then I Love You Baby was domestic violence based on the man on it. It was like a narrated story, and the video, like the paranoid guy, is the woman cheating, is she not? And it was like the whole like mental health side things. And there's a girl local, and she was in a domestic violence home. So she'd gone to a domestic violence. This is last year, and she sent me a message like saying like she showed the women at this place, and like when I was doing it, like I never went out. You know, like as a creator, you don't go out of your way to make something for people to connect with them. I don't think it's like I don't. I just kind of like, oh, just that's where I'm going. Like creatively, this is what I'm feeling. Whether it's an emotional track or it's a story or whatever, it's just it kind of is. You don't ever think in the forefront, I'm doing this to change someone's life or to resonate. But like the messages that the message conversation I had with her, it was really like deep and meaningful. So it was like she showed the women at this place, and like it was like really beautiful. Like the messages that were coming back, like we really resonate. Like we really we like. I mean, they resonated with them like on a deeper level, and it was yeah, it was beautiful. It really was beautiful to like to for something I'd done so long ago as well. And this was like 2014, and like last year, like it kind of like come back. How that was brought back up. And it's about something like that I've done then, like touched people like on that level. And those messages are like, yeah, they're what it's about. You know what I mean? Like that's the
like, so kind of on that note, a lot of your music is gritty. It touches on these kind of pretty dark, traumatic themes. A lot of trauma in there. How much do you ever second guess yourself as far as like, is that what I want to put out? Is there a process of like, okay, so you're creating it on one hand, and then what you're putting out is slightly different? Like, I'm just wondering if there's any doubt ever of like what you're wanting to put out into the world, because I think that's something that, you know, I've felt at certain times, lyrics that I could have written, am I going to alienate myself by saying that? And it's kind of from the heart.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's this sensitivity, there's a vulnerability in writing, especially because it can, sometimes you can be writing from an alias and sometimes it can seem like it's you. So it's one of these things of like,
yeah. I mean, it's, I had it like one of the ones I did last year was like when I did Why Don't You Listen to Me with Roscoe, and it was on the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And I was like, oh, I don't really know if I want to, like, do you mean as someone from the West, a white British male, it's like, is really my place to be speaking on this? And it's like, do you mean, and like, it was like a big time. Like the whole Black Lives Matter sort of thing was like a big time for reflection of race and it and the issues like that. And it's like, am I allowed to speak on this? Do you mean can I put this out? Is like in the way it come about, Roscoe come to the studio and he said, I've written this. And I actually wrote like half of those lyrics were written one morning. I woke up, it was like after the George Floyd thing. And my missus, she's mixed race. So it was like, I put myself that morning, I put myself in this scenario of like, oh, what if it was her? Like, I mean, I just wrote it and I was like, oh, I wrote it in my journal with the intention I don't want to put this out. Like, do you mean, it's like, I don't want to put this, I just did it. It was like one of those creative things. There's a lot of stuff I write in there lyrically that is just like, okay, yeah, like you say, it's like, maybe I don't want to put that out. That's like kind of personal. And I felt it wasn't for me at that time to have a voice. Do you mean it's this like this it's their struggle. This is that let them have these artists need to have the voice. So I didn't really feel so comfortable with putting it out. And Roscoe comes to the shoes like, nah, when you want it, and it's like, I don't know, man. Like I don't know if I feel comfortable, but and I showed him what I had, and he was like, nah, you have to put that out. And it was well received, and it really was. And like still now, it's like, oh, do you mean? Because it's like certain subjects, and you think, oh, again, it's going into the whole thing of like where I was saying I was like blissfully unaware of like anything that was going on in the world. And then when you're back on social media, you see all these things happening, and it's like, yeah, it's, I mean, it's like, again, like the divisiveness, the narratives of what's going on. And it's like, oh, do I go down the row of having my voice and my opinion on such things? Like, do I bear that? What angle do I take? So I think last year, Why Don't You Listen to Me was like, yeah, is this the right time for me to say this? And should I be, as a white male, with a British white male with privilege, should I be speaking on this subject when it's probably a time for other people to be having their voice? Do you know what I mean? It's like, and that it was going on my head with that. So that, yeah, there are things when I think, oh, should I be putting this out? Is this, I mean, like, is this going to like please? And then, but then you get into the scenario of like, what are you doing? Like, you're kind of like putting yourself into a corner of like, what can I put out? What can't? And it was like, nah, fuck that. I have a voice. Um, Hopefully, I'm using it for the greater good of other people, as well as myself. Hopefully, they can resonate with it. Um, but yeah, it's the whole ego thing, in it, of like, don't let yourself talk yourself out of something that someone else might think, because the someone else is what someone else thinks of you is none of your business. That's their business. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I love that quote.
Really, it can be really tough to do, as the doing, because you, like you say, it's like when you see all the comments and stuff going on, it's like, oh, do I really want to?
And as far as your actual kind of artistry, if you like, because something that I've experienced is there's a therapeutic aspect, and it's like I may be putting it may sound like an opinion, but it's also just a creative act. It's a way of reflecting and learning about myself. And so it's fluid, and I think there's a fear sometimes that we seek consistency. Like, we want people to be the same all the way through, and so there's something that if you're going to put something out there, it's kind of like, well, that's who you are, and it's like, okay, this is me for now. Whereas I think it's so important to allow this fluidity and growth,
100%,
and appreciate art for that. Like, okay, this is a window, even if that's not Gimson's artistic opinion, that's an opinion that's out there, and it's been channeled through his music, and you can come back and revisit it and change. And
the thing with it, it's like, I remember Jay-Z saying it once, and he said, these are just my thoughts in a moment of time. And as well, it's like, when you touched on there about the how you're being creative and what you're doing, it's like sometimes I look at it, I think, well, if I could just like bang out like a load of tracks, which would be easy to do, which sounded very similar, of a very similar genre, target a fan base and do it like how, and I'm like, nah, that sounds like hell. That sounds awful. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, well, what if I wouldn't make that? Like, why can't I just go and do that? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, someone from a completely different genre says, well, do you want to come and collab on this? I was like, oh, no, I better not do that, because it might confuse people that are listening, or it might break the algorithm. And I think, again, it's there's no right or wrong. I mean, some people love to play for the crowd, and they love to play for other people's subjectiveness, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, if someone wants to do that as an artist and they want to create, but for me, it was always, I wouldn't say always, there's probably an element of it, like early on with the ego in the 20s or whatever. I mean, going back to the core essence, there was like, I found hip hop, which helped me through hard times as a teenager, listening to it as a consumer. And then there was the part of making it, and then you grow to like, oh, this is like, again, you find yourself as a creator, but then you go and you get into the ego side of things. Like with anything in life, it's like trying to, and it's like, oh, then get nervous of not having it, and then getting to the point where you go back to it, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, no, let's go back to the essence again. I do this as a therapeutic thing, as this is a way of bearing myself, whether it's something that sits in my journal and doesn't get put out, whether it's something I put out, whatever, it's that at the essence, that's what it is.
Just to like spend a bit more time on that. Therapy is one thing, and like, but also creativity is tremendously fun. So like, how, what elements, what sort of qualities does or has your artistry brought into your life?
Well, an appreciation for what others are doing. I think it more than, because you can like, not to talk so much smack about what other people are doing, or say what other like to say, like, someone might do something and it might not sound great. So I mean, you might not actually like it, but fuck, that person's doing it. They're trying. They're out there. They're doing it. Like, to not like, do you mean? And I think that was one of the things that I was always maybe like worried about. It's like, oh, if someone's like better than you or more experienced than you, are they going to look down on you? And I think you'd have to be a real fucking asshole as someone more experienced to look down on someone who's lesser experienced than you. And they are out there. We all know they're out there because there are assholes out there. But yeah, so then to like not talk smack and look like for people that are trying to like really like be like, no, like, do you mean like an encouraging aspect of other people, trying to give other people props for the sheer element of like we were just showing up, that vulnerability. Do you know what I mean? You might not be very good and you've all got to start somewhere. So what I try to tell my boy now, like whatever it is he wants to do, it's like you got to start like with whatever you want to do. That everyone's bad when they start something. You don't just start something and be good. Like that's not how the world works. It's like everyone was rubbish when they started. Like, okay, you have some people that are really talented and they're gifted in certain ways, but most people aren't. It's like most people are they're rubbish. They make mistakes. They fall, and that's the beauty of it. Do you know what I mean? And it's like really try to offer encouragement and to people in that scenario rather than just like yeah. So I think that from my creative is one of the biggest things that's probably helped me. Well, not helped me. One of the biggest gifts that it's given me beyond my creativity to be more empathetic towards other people that are trying anything. Do you know what I
mean? Yeah. That's beautiful. I really like that.
I mean, most of the people that do talk smack or talk down, I mean, like I said, we do get the odd asshole who's like probably successful. It's like, and maybe money or success just only exasperates that. But generally, like truly successful people, like, because success is never really like measured with wealth. When you talk to truly successful people, okay, they might have done well and they might have made a lot through wealth, but their success was not that. Like, do you mean like they it's like when we said about the people courses, like the people who are selling you these courses, like I done this, and it's like a lot of it's a facade. Do you know what I mean? It's like a house of cards that could all come crumbling. It's like these people are not. It's very shadow. It's like they'll pose in front of the Lamborghini on the Instagram advert of like, do you mean come in? It's like I can teach you this for this much money, and it's like it's not superficial. When you speak to like people who are truly present and happy, and successful with themselves, money's never like the thing, or like the fame is never the true thing. It's like they're always in touch with their core values, and I think it's just remembering that, innit? Like why you started.
I want to touch on the thing that you said about your kids, and I think this is an interesting one because in a way, like you've got a job, you've got a house, you've got finding time for your creativity. I mean, that's something that we could talk about, but also I think that there's a really important element in the fact that you are carving out some time, and you're showing your kids that there's a part of life that is, this is something that their dad does. That maybe it has some financial value and stuff, but it shows that life can be about a passion, and it doesn't have to have this strict return. It can be about just being part of the creative project that humanity is, and I think that with so much focus, I've spoken to a number of people, especially mothers, who feel like they're so their world is their children, and they're trying to be really successful and bring in money so they can go to the right schools and take them here and there, and then have a nice orderly house and feed them good food and all of that, which is super admirable. But to take time away from that to show them that like actually it's really important to give to yourself, and part of that can be creative, whether it's art or music or knitting or whatever it is, but being able to model for kids that actually this is a fundamental part of being human, and it doesn't have to do with the kind of outcome or the success or those things that we just talked about. So
it's the act of doing. It's like that famous Alan Watts analogy where he says about the going to the musical for the one crashing chord, and he says about kids where they go through school, and he said they're like, come on, like come on, kitty, and he's like says about going, they go through secondary school and they go through college and they get a job in some insurance sales company, and it's like they go in there, it's like, oh, don't worry, you're going to get to your retirement, you're going to get your pension, and all the time they're being promised this thing, and then they get there and then they don't feel any different than they did however many years, and they realize they've wasted all this time chasing this thing. And well, we should have goals. I don't think it's what are you chasing and are you missing? Is that goal the right goal for what the journey before it? And then he says, yeah, you get there. It's like doing that is like going to watch an orchestra, but just going to watch the crashing chord. You don't give a shit about the rest of what's happened. It's just like, I just want to go for the final crashing chord. And that's like pretty much what you're doing by living your life like that. And it's like, there's something beautiful in that. And it's like, yeah, trying to, you can show that to your kids as well. It's like, yeah, take the time out, give yourself some self-love. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, it's not about the final outcome or the showmanship. But again, I think trying to do it in a way of not being preachy or like saying because you can't, it's like you can't dictate to your kids because they're their own people, and it's like it's fucking tough, man, really. It's like, I mean, it's like my missus is a lot better than I am, so like always has like for like teeth brushing and stuff. I'm like, come on, just brush your teeth, and like she can make it really fun and like make a game out of it and stuff. It's like yeah, she's I mean, whether it's that maternal instinct or not, I don't know, but yeah,
it's a creative one as well, eh?
I mean, again, it's a creative thing in itself, isn't it? It's like how to get children to, and it's like the whole thing of like getting down on their level and all that sort of stuff. But it's yeah, it's because I struggle. I talk like about things like I'm having a conversation with you now, and it's like when you're trying to talk to a 5-year-old, I don't know what the fuck you going on about, mate. But yeah, I think with that, it's like someone said to me that it was right. They said it's not what you're saying to them, it's the fact that you're there and they're witnessing it. And it's like I took Carvel on but they all come actually. So on Gunhearted, the track that me and Jay done, what record me and Reco done, it's Carvel's in that, so he holds the gun. So Lena, a friend of mine who was in the video, she's the blonde lady in the video, she's it was her son who was supposed to do the shooting, but he didn't want to, pulled out last minute. And I literally got to the end of my like road in the car and I was like, oh shit. And the whole day, like, because I know that Jay was like, he didn't want to record it. He was saying like, oh no, I feel this is rushed, because I had this idea. I was like, nah, it's gonna work. And I know that because Jay, he was running that film company, and the way that they did things was going, because we had to talk about it, and it was like the way that they did it was all very proper, like, because it was all like, and the way that I started making music videos with Chris from the Candy Farm, it was like kind of just like, let's just work it out. Like, do you mean he got a camera, we got a DSLR, started putting some videos together, and just like, yeah, turn up on the day with a kind of loose sort of like plan. There's no like meticulous scripting apart from I Love You Baby. That was the only video I did that. So there's no particular scripting. It's just like, oh, that worked, quick, yeah, let's try that. And you just try things and it works. So that's kind of like my like school of thought when it comes to like videos. It's like I've got like how I want it to look, and generally got the plan in place, but there's no like, okay, this is how the camera angle is going to go. It's like, no, I'll just trust Chris to do that. Like, I mean, this so yeah, there was already that off, and then when he said he wouldn't come in, then I started to doubt myself. It's like, oh shit, maybe today isn't going to work. And I was like, no, today is going to work. It's got to work. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's too many people. I mean, I've got too many people involved. So I just slammed the car in reverse. I went back into the house. I was like, Carvel, do you want to be in a video? And he's like, oh, I don't know. And then he goes, is Mummy coming? I looked at my missus, and she goes, yeah, I'll come along if you want. So not just it wasn't just him that come, like she came, my daughter came, and like it was like a family day out on this like music video shoot, which is quite cool. And
brilliant.
I got the checkered shirt that I wore in it, like it's in the wardrobe. And my daughter ever sees the checkered shirt, she says, Daddy's muddy t-shirt, Daddy's fighting with his friend on the floor. The song comes on Gunhearted, she'll say it, she's 2, and she's like, Daddy's muddy t-shirt, Daddy is fighting on the floor. And it's like, do you mean it's like that? I mean, I hope it's like put like a positive thing in her head, like not like a negative thing, because it's fighting and stuff. Like, do you mean it's like people like that? But I think being on the lens behind it, it's like they've seen the creative process of it. It's like, oh wow, this is imagination. It's not like just me just like sticking them in front of like a Freddy Krueger film or something, like staying up on it because they get nightmares. It's like being on the other side of it. So yeah,
being part of that whole creative process. Yeah, that's a great story.
Because they were actually one before, they were in the Shrink's Wet Dream as well. That video, it was it's the one where there's 2 of me, and I come back and I look in the window at the end, and Carvel come out. He was helping me dig the grave. We actually used a vegetable patch in my back garden, so we digged that out, and we done the close-up shots of me buried in my vegetable patch in the garden, and then the long shots we went out to like a field and just done the long shots right there. But the close-up ones were done in my back garden, which me just like lying on my veg patch before I put my cow and carrots in. But yeah, he came out and dug that, and then we done the rest in the living room, and then we sat in there, and there's like the scene of me reading the book and that, and it was just yeah. Hopefully you don't get a bit old and think, oh God, like I hope my friends don't see that. But yeah, it was beautiful. So again, it's memories, like incorporating people that you love into what you're doing without like trying to make them do the things that you want to do. And ultimately everyone has to find their own path of
yeah, I love there's a few things there. I love that you've got this enthusiasm of like, no, it's gonna happen, you know, because I think there has to be a bit of audacity involved, you know, in the creative act. It's like in some way there's leadership, there's audacity, there's bringing people along for the ride, and then you're kind of committed to them, and that's motivation to see it through. And I think that on some level it needs to be trusted. You know, there's a moment of doubt, like, oh, maybe is that a good thing for my 2-year-old to be thinking? But it's like, well, you've got to trust the creative process, that there's like that in and of itself is a positive thing, to be exposed to like people doing stuff in your family, in your community, people like making a stand for something in whatever way it is, rather than just being consumers. Because this is like you know, we kind of got two choices. We can consume it from others, or we can create it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think going way, way, way back, you know, that was our form of entertainment. And it was always this positive feedback loop of, like you said, as far as what creativity is given you is kind of an empathy for anyone who's doing anything. It's like, great, look at you, we're contributing, and that really raises people's spirits, I think.
I would get, like I said again, the whole purpose of life, like I said, what I think I found, like I wouldn't have said this before, but like it's to create whatever it is you're creating, whether you're creating an environment of the home, like do you want to paint your walls, I don't know, purple with yellow spots, like that's, you're creating yourself by coloring your walls in your house like that is still creating in some sort of aspect. Like I said, like this everything, just using that to create. And it's I think like you say, you could be a consumer and you could go to IKEA and you could just buy the generic thing, or you could be like, well, hang on a minute, I'm gonna do that and put that on my wall. And it's just like, do you mean it's like this? Just explore it. Like again, do it in your own home, like exploring your own home. And then when you're ready, if you're ever ready, because there's nothing wrong with not
showing
the world, but
definitely.
I mean, it's everyone's got their own comfort zone and where they want to be, or what they want to give. But I wholeheartedly think that everyone has something to contribute or offer to this world. And it is a shame that some people never do find it, because I truly do think people put in the right environment and nourished in the correct way, I think everyone does. Do you mean it's like we'll put so much pressure on now as well, of like, to like we were talking about, like you touched on, Nick, and it was saying when you were saying about people, you have to be successful, you have to be this man, you have to go through this struggle, you have to do this, and people have like, it's almost like people have lost like the admiration for someone who just does want to go and do like a traditional kind of job. Do you know what I mean? And just go and do that, and it's like there's just so much pressure. It's like, you got to be this, you got to be that. It's like, well, no, whatever happened to be, or like we said about the mums just being like this admirable woman who just wants the best for her kids. And I think there's a lot of that with women at the moment as well. The whole thing about, because women now with where a lot we're on a path of like things becoming more equal playing field, and it's going in that direction, and women now with the choice, and it's like biology isn't always on the side of women, and it's like what in the long run is more beneficial, or what is truly going to give a woman this thing. Well, not just women, but like I say women, because women generally do have the maternal instinct, and this what if they don't have the children and it gets too late and they get that far in their career, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, like, did I make the right choice? Did I not make the right choice? Do you know what I mean, medicine's got great now, and I think people can have them older, but it's like there's there's that element of it as well. It's like this pressure, so much pressure onto the world. It's like, you can be this and you can be that, and it's like bombarded with it from every angle of
I totally know where you're coming from, and it's I mean, it's a huge conversation. I don't know. I guess to bring it back to this context of like, at least how I see it, is that on some level, like having the trust in where you're at in your journey, you know, because you're creating a life. And the only thing you can really rely on, because there's going to be all of these messages, whatever time period you're in, you know, there's always going to be a message of what you should do. And I think that one of the only voices, we have to be able to hear that voice inside ourselves that says, all right, well, I'm going to do this for me, even if it doesn't work out the best. You know what I mean? Because I think there's definitely an element of, you're talking about painting your walls and stuff. And there's something about the amount of expertise that we have available to us, the amount of stuff on the internet. It's like anything you want to do, you can Google the best way to do it. And so we get into this mindset that it's not about me doing it. It's about me doing it the best way it can be done, which is just being like a conduit for a result. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about me, it's about the result. So even if I had a shitty life, if it could be looked at objectively, it's like, well, you did all the right things. It's back to that symbol crash, you know? And so I think that it's really hard for men and women at this stage where life is just speeding up and the whole world, we have no reference points for anything anymore. You know, so I think one of the strongest things we can do is like, okay, how much can I actually hear that voice inside me that's willing to fuck it all up, but know that I did it for the right reasons? You know what I mean? And that,
don't ever lose that intuition or that gut.
And what you said earlier about the Sapiens writer, you know, this harmony thing. And I think that's one of the only ways that we can find harmony is through people actually figuring out their creative voice and what it sounds like, you know, because
I think it's like the whole thing about you saying like putting your energy into global things or things that we can't change, and we can change it, but we don't. Like this the whole thing of like the whole Buddhist thing. It's like, no, you go within, and you really do. It's like knowing it now, like you really do. You have to go within to change, and it's like, how can I lead? What can I? Do you mean what can I contribute, and what action can I take to do that? Not like, do you mean it's just doing it? I mean, the being in it and acting and leading, and just showing up and being the best person you can be, and hopefully that'll ripple outwards when other people see it. I mean, you can talk the talk, but without the action, people they won't listen. They need to see it. They need to. Do you mean to trust someone? You need to. Everyone's got. It's like then you just be a politician. You can do this and that. It's like, well, no, I mean, it's just some bloke promising me some stuff on the TV. It's like, no, people need the accountability. They want real leadership. They want people who are walking alongside with you. Like, I mean, they won't be told what to do or whatever. And I think that's like a new part of it. And I was going to go somewhere that's fucking go off the top of my head now. Jordan Peterson, he said something, and one of the things he said, which really stuck me, and it was about leading, and he said, what is wrong with having the goal of at your dad's funeral, for example? So your dad's died, and being the man that steps up when everyone's losing their shit and no one can hold it together, but you make it your goal to stand up and be the man there that can get your shit together and hold it down for everyone else. Those things, those qualities in life, like those moments that those defining moments of a character, more than anything, again, going back to like the whole superficial thing, those moments, being that person, being that admirable person who can be there and be like, okay, and truly giving to the people around you for the want of them, or putting them before your own feelings. And I think that was like when he would that was like, yeah, it's fucking beautiful. Doing like that, what is wrong with having those goals? Instead of a goal of like, I want to get fucking 50,000 followers on TikTok. It's like, well, no. Yeah, like I said earlier about trying to measure my music on what comments did I get? How do people feel? Again, measure it with that. Don't get sucked into the superficial side of it.
Yeah,
which is it's tough, and that's the biggest challenge, I think, putting it out in the world now, in the world we live in with the Instagram and the stuff, and like what you were saying about comparing to others and stuff. It's like, again, come back, that inner voice, those qualities, the essence, the whole thing is just constant reminding yourself. And like I say, having the time in the train on my own, or the meditating or the journaling, these things to really reaffirm and be like, okay, no, I'm me. Let's do it. Do you mean I'm still here? I haven't got too lost in the world of social media yet. Do you know what I mean? It's yeah,
I'm still here. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I'm still me. I'm still here. That this little voice is still inside of me. And it's there was one that what I've explored in writing about being a pilgrim, but a pilgrim with yourself. There's a guy, David White, his name is, and he's a poet. And there was some stuff that he was writing, and it really inspired me to write lyrics on it about being a pilgrim, making a journey back to your past self, of like thanking your past self for what you've done or the foundations you've laid as your past self. Because when people talk about it, and it opened up this whole new idea of what pilgrimage really is. A lot of people say they go on a pilgrimage to Mecca, or in Dublin to like a Catholic church there, or whatever. It's like, well, no, the true pilgrimage is the pilgrimage of self. But that is a symbology of the pilgrimage of self. That's all that is. And it's like, yeah, it's true. It's like the journey again. The journey all comes back to the same things. And it's like, again, channeling and listen. This is what I said about channeling and listening to the right people. Like if you listen to the inspiration and the right people, not necessarily just through music, but like, because like my inspiration comes from a lot of stuff which isn't music in my writing. It's it's not getting bogged down with too much of what the general.
So a question on that, like the right people. I mean, I can guess how I resonate with that, but how do you check in with yourself whether someone's right for you?
I think it's more craving the substance, the depth of what someone's saying, and it may not even necessarily be like how intellectual, whatever. It's like the depth and the meaning of how, if it just whether it resonates with you. And I think again, it's like it kind of like happens naturally from when you start looking in one thing, you just kind of go down rabbit holes, don't you? And it's I mean, like I went down, you go down some, you think, oh, yeah, no, it's like not really for me or whatever. Do you mean? Then you find another one. It's like, I really like where Russell Brand is at the moment. It's, I actually like signed up to Luminary, the podcast today, because it's just,
oh, cool.
The conversations he's having with people, it's like, oh wow, this is like crack. Like, give me some more of this. Like, do you know what I mean? It's really great, and I like there's a lot of, because there's so much of what he says, it just resonates so well with me at the moment of like the deeper conversation. There was a guy on there. If do you know Gabor Mate?
Yeah, I was just listening to a talk with him yesterday, actually.
Yeah. He's like, because I remember first seeing him on the second Zeitgeist movie years ago. And like now he's like spoke to a lot of, he's like spoke to like Tim Ferriss, Russell Brand. He's been on a lot of the podcasts, and like things like what he said like about childhood trauma, and that's really like helped, like not even like he's like opened up like, well, okay, what is childhood trauma? Childhood trauma is not necessarily what you think childhood trauma is. And then you then start thinking yourself, well, okay, maybe that's why I'm like that as a person because of that. And it's like then you start again deeper searching yourself. But his big thing's addiction. So he was saying like why people become addicted is because of childhood trauma. And he said some childhood trauma, people don't even know they had childhood trauma. It could come down to something like your mum not hugging you enough, and you don't know that at the time. Do you know what I mean? And it's like anytime I'm distant or whatever, it's like maybe I think like my mum and dad split up when I was like one. I've got no like real recollection of memory of them ever together. So you have that period of on my own with my mum, and then it's like then went off into the stepfamily. It was like a change there. And it's like these changes are actually going through it. You don't really know until you look back and say, well, okay, yeah, maybe that wasn't like normal, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? And when I say normal, I think like almost like on a tribal level of like when you look at
right,
close a community is, and we're not that far away from it. I think we've evolved too quickly of like, even just being in a house of 2.4 children, I don't think is natural. Like the kids should be with other members of the family, and there should be other people around. Like, I mean, it's like, and I think I compartmentalize, and I like to try and get myself out more, if like rather just being compartmentalize myself personally. It's like we're saying, like it's to share that out more. But it's yeah, I think this trust of more people being involved and like being a tight knit community of so many people. Do you know what I mean? It's yeah, I think like we've lost a lot of that in recent years. Do you know what I mean? It's like you can just share your kids with other people and have that trust, and everyone really does look out for each other, and like it's not this like, oh yeah, keeping up with the Joneses, what's next door got.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of, I think we're kind of coming to the end, but as a bit of a creative visionary last question, I think this is kind of interesting, you know, like where would you like to see yourself in, say, 20 years? You know, there's so much going on, and I don't mean like artistically, but just kind of free thought of like what you're just saying there, where it's kind of a more community in some elements. Like,
so there's that, but then like I think I've got like this real like romanticism with a cottage in the middle of like a snowy like Canada and like the wilderness.
right, beautiful, yeah.
But that's like, I think that's probably like further on. I think that's just like where I want to end up. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, just like, well, kind of like what you've got, like
classic
like,
artist retreat sort of thing. Yeah,
you've just done it a lot sooner than I have. Yeah, I don't know. It's like I like the idea of like more family, like even more kids. But I think economically, sadly, I don't think that is like viable. Like I don't think in this world that we live in, I don't think it's fair to have more. I think two can be a challenge, and you can see it in Carvel with like when Cecily come along. It's like, okay, you can see like why, because he's not getting the attention that he always did, and it's like we've got so much going on in lives now. It's do you know what I mean? It's yeah. So in 20 years, I don't know. Artistically, I'd probably say I think that an ultimate goal with me for artistically would be more recognition from like more from like I say like a respect of from people, like acknowledged, like yeah, okay, like you know, just like whether they like it or not, which I think is I'm actually, I think hopefully I like to think I'm on the right path, but it's yeah, just to hopefully not lose my way, and in 20 years if I can still say I'm on this kind of path now.
Yeah, I mean it's a long time, but yeah.
Well, we say that and it
flies by. Yeah,
life's fleeting moments, man. It's it really does. You know what? I don't know how I measured time before having kids. It's like, oh my god, he's 6. He's 6 next month. It's like, fuck, where did those 6 years go? Do you know what I mean? And it's yeah, I think that as well has truly taught me to try and embrace the moments when you're in the moment, because you think, fucking hell, it's going so quickly. And it's you watch those videos of like the elderly people and they're like on death's door and they're like, what are your regrets? And it's like, I never took a risk, or I never did this. And it's like, do you mean, it's like don't be too careful, like do it, just bare your soul. Do you mean,
brilliant yeah. Gimson, lovely, great words to end on. Don't be too careful, man. Do it.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a pleasure. It was yeah, really nice. See if I can do this for hours. I need to get a job like Joe Rogan, I think. Maybe I'll do that next Joe Rogan.
Wicked. Is there any final notes you want to leave people with? Anything that's coming out or place you want to point them to?
What have I got? So I've got talking about on the social media thing. I've got a track. When will this go up?
As soon as I get an internet connection that can upload it, I'll just stick it right.
Okay, cool. So end of May, I've got a track coming out called Dopamine, which is basically about the addiction of technology, social media.
Okay, cool.
Sort of like UK garage sort of vibes, but yeah, with a twist. But yeah,
nice, man.
End of May.
All right. Yeah. And you've also got a little podcast coming out with you.
Yes,
and
me and Roscoe, we've got the first episode next Monday, and then after that we've got guests on them. So the first one, it's like a bit of gibberish and deep meaning stuff and like everything in between. It's like a kind of all-rounder sort of thing. So yeah, that's the Gimson and Roscoe show. That'll be on my YouTube channel. and it'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcast. It's just called Podcast,
Cool.
isn't it? The Apple one, I think. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, nice. Well, I'll link people to your Instagram and a few of those things when I drop
Man,
this.
sweet.
And, yeah. Thanks very much, mate.
Wicked. Nice one.